Well, sneaky, very sneaky. Let's begin. The article says that Jeremy Hunt has told Tory allies this week that he wants to cut taxes quickly and will start with the autumn statement this year. And as the Conservatives face crushing results in the local elections, sources close to the Chancellor says he has a plan to win the voters back. And of course, the Chancellor has been bitterly criticised by Conservative MPs, particularly supporters of Liz Truss, that he has increased taxes and harmed economic growth. But a source close to Mr Hunt, who of course may or may not spell his name with a silent C, told express.co.uk, shameless plug for you there, that the Chancellor is going against all of his instincts, with keeping tax up at a level which is the highest in British modern history. The source said that Jeremy wants to cut taxes and cut them quickly. He is very clear about that, and he is not happy with what he feels he has to do at the moment. He intends to bring in tax cuts in the autumn, and there will be a lot more in the spring next year. The move will of course come ahead of an expected general election in the autumn next year, with the hope that income tax in particular will put money back into people's pockets and create a more positive atmosphere in the country. Over the summer, Mr Sunak said that he wanted Britain to eventually have the lowest level of income tax in modern history, but he blamed the COVID pandemic and lockdown costs for having to raise taxes now. Mr Hunt, meanwhile, campaigned in the leadership election to bring corporation tax down to 15p in the pound, even though, of course, he has just increased it to 25p. But one ally of Mr Hunt has claimed that the Chancellor only went ahead with the recent corporation tax rise because the Prime Minister had insisted on it. But with the Tories losing more than 1,000 seats in the local elections this week and trailing Labour in the polls by 15 points, then the party is under pressure to reverse its fortunes. Well, of course, I don't know about you, but personally I think one of the best ways they could reverse its fortunes is by bringing Boris back. I know that a lot of people out there don't like Boris, but a lot of people do, and he is the person that people voted for in 2019. And remember, no one actually voted for Rishi to become Prime Minister in the first place, unless of course you're counting 100 MPs, that is. Usually Conservative members do have a vote on the last two candidates, but of course that was completely done away with, and Rishi done a sort of Gordon Brown style takeover. And remember, Boris is actually quite good at winning elections. And of course there is no such thing as the Rishi bounce, is there? Unless of course there's some sort of sex position him and his wife have, but anyway. Maybe if they didn't want to lose so badly, it might have actually been a good idea if they could have found a way to cut at least one or two style of taxes on a couple of weeks before the local elections took place. But no doubt, of course, they're trying to save up for their big 2024 manifesto next year, and maybe, who knows, the scrapping of the TV licence might also be included in that, especially as its TV licence Raw Charter Protection ends in 2027, which will be a couple of years into the next Parliament, won't it? And of course, whilst Labour is probably quite smug at the moment with their big election wins, what they actually forgetting is that Reform UK was not in quite a lot of constituencies. I know this because I went to go and vote, and I was going to vote for Reform, but of course they were not in my constituencies to sort out Reform, so in the end I had to spoil my ballot paper and put Reform UK on it, before of course popping it in a box to give my little message to Rishi, which obviously, yes, I know he's not going to see, but the fact that I and a lot of other people didn't vote Conservative will hopefully make sure he pays attention to that. But let's face it, in general, the Tories have got to do a lot more than just decrease a couple of taxes, haven't they? Although one good thing that will be on their side, and will obviously be on the side of Reform, is that there's certainly no way at all going to be as close to the Labour Party with any sort of woke policies that Labour intends to put out. Although, actually thinking about it, that could be quite frightening if Labour get in 2024. No doubt, of course, that would lead to massive tax rises to pay for any such policies that Labour decides that must be best for the country. All, 2% of it, I'm guessing. Tube customers have described their horror after becoming stuck on a TfL train on the Underground at Clapham Common as carriages filled up with smoke. Video circling on social media shows people climbing through the shattered windows of an underground train and legging it to safety as the carriage appeared to fill up with smoke. One bloke who said he was on the train, Jake Sharp, described the horror to the Daily Star, saying there was a smell of smoke on the train. The train went down about 5 carriages into the tunnel and then stopped. And the train on the opposite side pulled in and people were running to get off the platform. The whole time carriages were filling up with smoke and the doors did not open. And when we tried to open them, they only opened maybe about 10 centimetres. Thanks to the workmen on the platform, on their way home they had hammers and other tools to smash the windows for everyone to get out. There was strangely no response from station staff at all, even with everyone's screams for help. Jake said he wasn't sure if everyone made it off the train, and added that he sustained a cut on his chest from glass during the mad scramble to evacuate the station. He added that the hysteria kicked in when the driver said nothing despite a strong burning spell. Another passenger, Nick Bonfield, said you could see people run around concerned when the smell of smoke entered the carriage. He told the Star, then the tube moved for a couple of seconds and came to an abrupt halt. The doors weren't opening and people were getting panicked and trying to open the doors. Then the lights on the tube went off. Someone came a couple of minutes later and the doors opened. There was glass all over the platform from when the doors had been smashed, and it smelled strongly of smoke. TfL though told the Star, we are sorry for any distress caused at Clapham Common. The London Fire Brigade attended the station and confirmed that there was no fire. We are investigating the details of this incident. One thing I'm sure you'll agree is actually quite worrying is the fact that someone said that TfL staff, or the station staff, whatever you want to call them, didn't actually do anything. Surely their main concern, well, apart from the money they receive of course, should be the people or passengers or their customers who ride the trains in the first place and their safety. That should be put above all, shouldn't it? Because surely you would have thought that if something was burning or there was some sort of error, the driver would have a warning pop up on his display. In which case an announcement I think really should have been given, especially as it would obviously be a safety concern. So there is just no excuse for this at all, and I can't see how something like this would have even happened, because I know I may be taking things for granted here, but I'm guessing at least some sort of safety checks would be carried out routinely on their trains, if not before every journey at the start of their day. Unless of course they're probably missed on occasion, which is actually quite wrong in itself, and I'm not saying that is the case, but it just might have been, if something like this did indeed happen. And let's face it could actually have been much worse, couldn't it, if the carriage caught on fire and the doors weren't open, and people could have had all sorts of injuries, including fatal, if they couldn't escape. And yes, I know thousands of people ride the tube every day, but hopefully TfL will find a way to compensate every single passenger that was on that train, even if it means going through any CCTV that was on the train to see who was on it or not, and asking people to send a photograph of himself or something like that. But, you know, something just tells me that might just be a bit too much effort for them. But I personally think that at the very least they should either increase their safety checks or actually put in some sort of measure to make sure that something like this never happens again. The Welsh Government has commissioned the Valuation Office Agency to evaluate all of the country's homes. This will allow the government to establish a new system of council tax bands, reports Wales Online. At present there are 9 council tax bands in Wales from A to I that were put in place based on property values in April 2003. The additional band of I was added in April 2005 for the highest value properties, and that was for properties valued above £424,001 and above. And Wales is the only country in the UK that has previously updated its valuations since council tax was introduced in 1993. Rates in England and Scotland are still based on the 1991 evaluations for when the council tax was set up. People in Northern Ireland, though, pay the equivalent of council tax through the rates system. A report for the Institute of Fiscal Studies found house prices across Wales had increased by 150% from 2003 to 2022, and this means those who live in properties which have gone up in value by more than the average since 2003 may be paying less council tax than they should be. And of course, those in homes whose value has kept in step with the Wales average may be paying more than what they should be. The IFS has described the current banding system as Wales as out of date, regressive and distortionary. Legislation will be put in place in April 2025 setting out the changes to council tax, with Finance Minister Rebecca Evans to outline how the new system will work later on this year. The re-evaluation will update all properties tax band based on property values at April 1st, 2023. The law states so that there must be 2 years between the date of the new valuation list being released and the changes to council tax being brought in. Miss Evans said the current system is regressive. She said it places a higher relative burden on those with lower wealth, and even though our system is more up to date than elsewhere, it is still 20 years out of date. She assured the changes were not about raising a single penny more in overall revenue, but about making the system fairer. But of course she did admit there would be winners and losers, and some residents pay more tax while others will see their bill decrease. Well, personally, I think it is good that things are updated over time. However, something tells me this is, no matter what she says, this probably might be a bit more of a cash grab, because it all depends how many winners or losers there would be, doesn't it? And of course, it does make me wonder how soon that would spread to the rest of the UK, where all of our council tax bands are updated. Although, of course, it does strike me strange where new properties have to actually be put back to what their value is in 1991, so it might actually end up being a good thing, even if it is just because some sort of house designs or layouts have changed over time, and some actually may seem more luxury in 1991 compared to what they do now. But let's face it, I'm no sort of council tax expert, so whether or not that may have had an impact on the price or council tax band that someone pays now is another matter indeed. But of course, we do often hear, don't we, that Martin Lewis occasionally says that people may actually be in the wrong council tax bands, and there is a process where you can challenge that. So if it was changed over here, then hopefully that would put an end to all of that. At least everyone would have the reassurance that they are indeed in the right band. Whether, of course, they may like that or not is a different thing entirely, isn't it? Although I don't know if it's just me, but I often have a look on Rightmove because, let's face it, I'm a bit nosy, but even on there, it often says that new or fairly new properties are in either a band B or C, rather than the lowest band A, which of course pays the lowest council tax. Even my current house is a band B, which to be honest I'm not too happy about, but I'm pretty sure my neighbour's on a band B, so to be honest there's not too much I can do about it. Unless of course they do update the system and put me in a band A, but then no doubt of course they'd put up the price, which would be another kind of virtual kick in the gonads, especially in the cost of living crisis. Because let's face it, it's obviously going to cost a bit to do that, isn't it? And I'm guessing, no doubt, of course, we'd be putting the bill for that, wouldn't we? Just like I'm guessing the countless millions of pounds that us, the taxpayer, has just paid for King Charles III's coronation. Let's face it, he's actually quite well off, so why he couldn't pay for it himself is, to be honest, a bit beyond me, but you would have thought that as we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis, he would have at least paid for some of it. But anyway, unfortunately, it looks like the tube isn't people's only worries, as the thing in this video could soon spread as fast as Sadiq Khan's ULEZ, which may actually affect quite a lot of people. Anyway, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.